Active income is how you start becoming the bank, stacking cash so that you can buy assets. The goal is to continue to invest in assets with your active income until your assets create passive income. What happens with a lot of people, I've talked about this quite a few times, but very often the young and dumb group who's listening to people on Instagram will say things like, well, millionaires have 7 streams of income, which the best lies are 60% truth. That is true. Most millionaires do have multiple streams of income. They didn't get there through multiple streams of income, though. They got there through a single stream of income. And they built into that, and they built into that, and they built into that. But then you'll get to a particular place where you have cash just piling on top of cash, in which case it's good to invest and put it in other places. To me, it's like you want 12 months in savings, depending on your lifestyle. Once you have that, both for your business and personal, then I don't want to sit on a ton of cash dollars. So for instance, I'm gonna explain this as I finish my formula here. What was inflation the last 12 months? We saw it peaked at 10%. We're down to 4% this year. At 10%, it means in 2021, something that costs $100 in 2021 costs how much in 2022? 110. And 4% more, so you're like 116-ish. That's inflation. It means something costs more year over year. Okay, if I was sitting on, let's say, $1 million in cash, to hit this point home, right now, if I had it in a savings account, I was smart enough to do that and not having a fucking checking account, what am I getting? I'd probably get 5%. 2022, did I make money or lose money on that? I lost 5% of my money because it was just sitting in cash. Make sense? Because of how the banking system works, and because we use a fiat dollar that is not backed by an actual asset, but by the US government, which is, if you look at a Benjamin, it's a promissory note paid by the US government to honor that debt, but it isn't tied to a real asset. It is tied to the US government, which worked, and it will work until it doesn't work. We have this thing called inflation. The more money we print, the higher inflation went. So during COVID, we printed $8 trillion, $8 trillion. I really honestly don't think, there's numbers now that we say so casually that I don't think people even understand the enormity of that number. But it's insane. In no way should anyone have been shocked that we saw huge inflationary pressure after printing that kind of money. We basically added a third more to our national debt in the period of 2 years. Said another way, we printed more money in 2 years than we had in like 30 years. So what happened? Well, when you print money and you add more money into the system, what's gonna happen? This is basic economics here. I don't know if you took economics in school, but if you put more liquidity into the markets, so people have more access to cash, and it's easier and cheaper for to grab cash, dollar is gonna go down, what's gonna go up? All other asset classes, because people are converting out of dollars cheaply into other assets. So somebody used to be able to only afford a home at $500,000, they can now afford a home at $800,000 because there's more money in the economy. So asset classes go up while the US dollar goes down. Okay, that's just what happened. Well, what that did was create inflationary pressure. A house that you could have bought for $500,000 3 years ago, 4 years ago, now you can't even get for $800,000. Great, right? Well, maybe for the people who owned those homes, but getting into a home now is a problem, and as the economy goes down and asset prices stay high, and we're pulling more dollars off the table, something is going to have to give, which is what we're seeing right now. More and more companies are laying off. We have recessionary pressure. We still have inflation, although it's come down, which is a good news, right? For the first time in a while, the Fed paused raising rates. That's a good sign for all borrowers. But it created this disbalance in asset classes. So you have a lot of people who are what we would say paper rich, cash poor, which means they have assets that on paper are worth more money, but they're illiquid. And when you get too high and there's no one to buy those illiquid assets because they cannot afford what they're priced at, what happens? They start going down, which is why people are afraid to get into a lot of assets right now, because there's not one asset that isn't compromised. Make sense? That's the situation we find ourselves in, which is why I like having some cash on hand. I don't want too much cash on hand because I'm not gonna outstrip inflation. Last year I would have lost 5% on my money. So for this year, I'm making 1% on my money. Well, there's other assets that'll do a hell of a lot better than that. So to the original question, I'm taking active income and I'm converting it into assets. The number one thing is my brain, because I'm investing that back in my skills. Skills create more value. I can put it more into more active income. So I'm synergistically affecting active income, which is I look at active income like my war chest. This allows me to play the game. If you played Monopoly, active income is how you start becoming the bank, stacking cash so that you can buy assets. The goal is to continue to invest in assets with your active income until your assets create passive income. Retirement, when you're in your 20s, isn't usually something we're thinking about. Retirement isn't an age, it's an equation. The equation is simple math. When your expenses are equal to or less than your passive income, you now get to choose whether you work or not. That right there, 98% of human beings will never get to experience. They will never get to experience a moment in time where they get to choose whether they work or not in a financially healthy, stable way. There are people revolting against the system and living off the government. That is not that, and that's not sustainable. That's going to lead to more pain for them down the road. And then they'll try to vote someone in who's going to solve all their problems for them. Stupid is what stupid does. But when you live in your fear, you make bad decisions, it's really easy to get stuck in this fucking chaos. So, running a single business, active income. Building an organization, passive income. That's the difference. So you're investing here so that you have something that lives into perpetuity. So in our business, and a good friend of mine ran a deal for 10 plus years, I think it's 20, but 10 to keep it honest, in our business. And he makes $4 million a year in passive income and will for the rest of his life. That's the difference between running a single business and building an organization. My goal is to take over the fucking world. This was just warm up. The last 10 years was simply warm up. It was simply me figuring out me. 300 offices, no. I want to build a macroeconomic system that changes the way we interface with the world by creating something that is a socioeconomic model, meaning we put people and profit together. One of the reasons why so many people are fed up with capitalism is capitalism has become all about profit at the cost of people. That's fucked, in my opinion. So for me, it's about creating a model that involves your scorecard as people and profit. So this is a very early model of that, in which we are investing in people's brains, right? We are literally paying people to learn that will change their life. The content I'm teaching, if it gets absorbed, and my imagine, when I go through my intention in the morning, I imagine my words like being warm butter over toast. They just get absorbed into the human, where it just assimilates into the human so that they fully understand what the fuck we're doing here. So governments as a whole always move towards making people dependent. History is unfortunately rife with this shit. The beginning of the end is always this point in which governments make their people dependent on the government. And then what happens? Because the human spirit cannot be contained, they eventually revolt because they don't want to be contained. However, we have an opportunity to stop that ever from happening if we just fucking read history and stop voting for people that make us dependent because we're hurting and we're struggling. Yeah, well, maybe fucking become a responsible human being, educate the fuck out of yourself, and get over it.